All right, welcome back to MGM and episode 2 of Talking Points. Got a few things to talk about today. We're going to look at a few things from the community that was hashtagged on Instagram or sent to me by email. We are going to discuss my initial impressions of Warhammer 40k 10th edition. We're going to talk about our kids and wargaming, quality over quantity for the YouTube content that you'll see in the future, and then wrap up with what's on the painting table. In our first segment, which is the community showcase, we are going to look at Underhive Dad, who has done some really good conversion work with some Stormcast Eternals to make some Palanite Enforcers. In this example, you can see where he's taken a Black Talon model and changed out the hands, giving 2 axes, which looks really good. And he's also put the Enforcer helmet there on the belt. So overall, a really good conversion and a great paint job as well. I believe he's used Army Painter Speed Paint here to achieve a really quality paint job. The yellow pops along with the Holy White as well. So excellent job there by Underhive Dad. Next up, we have Parent Painting Minis, and he has converted a mutated Ogren, which looks really cool. And this poster's a bit old, but I did want to bring it up because it's a really nice kit bash. He has used kind of the horns from a Bloodthirster kit. He's also used some bits from a Demon Prince kit and an Ogre's kit, and just overall looks really, really cool. He has went in and used some green stuff for one of the tentacle arms, which is really cool. Overall, just a really awesome kit bash. We've got Hive Dweller Bert that's back with an amazing Necromunda pick of a Rogue Doc and what looks to be some Ironhead Prospectors looking to enter into a room here. Again, his stuff is absolutely incredible. Highly recommend checking him out on Instagram as well. Now, these are a lot of fun to put together. If you have something that you want showcased on the show in the future, just give a hashtag miniature game montage on Instagram. You can send me an email, tag me, whatever you want to do. I don't want to go around and just take people's stuff without permission, so at least in using that, I can, just feel more comfortable about putting that here on YouTube. All right, moving on to the next topic, which is going to be my initial thoughts on my first game of 40k in 10th edition. And, as a spoiler alert, I had fun. I thought it was a good time. I'm actually playing my second game this weekend, so I'm looking forward to squeezing that in. Hopefully going to film a battle report. I do have an opponent locally here that I'll be playing, and I'm really looking forward to that. He's got a YouTube channel as well, so I just look forward to showcasing that game. But my initial thoughts on 40k is, while the game is simpler, there is still a lot going on. It's a lot to remember. While they have kind of peeled back on the rules, at least for now, as far as the index goes, every unit has something special that they can do. Some kind of buff or +1 to hit or stealth or something else, objective controlled. Every unit just seems to have its own special rule. So while they have slimmed back in a lot of areas, they've kind of given that to each unit independently, and that is something that you have to keep track of. You not only have to know what your units do, but you need to anticipate what your opponents can do as well. Now, I do like what they have done with the index cards. It makes it pretty easy to reference. We'll have to see if they continue with that into the future when they start to release codexes, if they will have codex cards that release as well. In short, there's still a lot going on, and maybe it's because it was our first game. There was a lot to keep up with and a lot to remember. I think it's just going to come more with muscle memory. The more you play, the more you're going to get used to it. I do like the universal special rules. There's a lot to keep track of with the weapons, because the weapons can all do different things now. They can have different weapon skills, ballistic skills, that kind of thing. But it is all listed on the card, so it makes it a little easier to reference instead of trying to thumb through a codex or your phone trying to find out what something does. From a points perspective, we played our battle report, which I'll post somewhere up here, at 1,000 points for our initial one at least. And the points feel kind of wonky. And I did see something on Facebook. It was a meme where a guy was wearing a mask and you pull it off and it's power level. That's essentially what it is. That's what it feels like. If you take a squad of 5 Marines and they're worth, 100 points or whatever the case may be, and you add one more and try to take 6, well, now they're 200 points. So it does feel a lot like power level. You can essentially take all the war gear options for free. So you know, if you're not playing WYSIWYG or something like that, it can be a bit of a mess to keep up with. We'll have to see how this changes in the future. I do like the more sparing command points. You do get a command point in each player's command phase. You don't start off with 12, 9, whatever the case may be. There are 6 core stratagems, I believe, in the core rules, and then each faction has their own 6. So it depends on kind of what type of strike force you're taking, to what, you know, what stratagems you have access to. That is kind of nice. It kind of slims back on the amount that you have to remember. And again, we'll just have to see how much those expand when the codexes come out and how much more that is to keep up with. I think if they just give you, depending on what strike force you take, you get these 6 plus your army special rule. That's really nice as well. Plus whatever the core ones are, it should not be that difficult to commit a lot of those to muscle memory. Now, we talk about the army special rules, and I do like how there's one kind of overarching rule for every faction. And I will talk about one specifically for Space Marines, which is Oath of Moment. And I really wish there was a better way to capture this, because quite frankly, it is a lot of rolling. You declare a target to be your Oath of Moment target, and you reroll all hits and all wounds. And it's a lot for every single unit that fires at that unit or is in combat with that unit. You're rerolling all of your hits and all of your wounds. It takes a lot of time. We found ourselves rolling, reroll, roll, reroll, and then, you know, your opponent takes their save, and then you move on to the next unit and you repeat that. It is cumbersome, and I really wish there was a way to kind of better capture that rule versus just simply re-rolling buckets of dice. The close combat that we got into felt very beefy. I did not feel that, at least in the game that we played, which was purely casual, that anything could really be alpha striked, especially not the Necrons, because they just seem to continue to come back, which is very thematic. But I did have an instance where I had some Thunderhammer Storm Shields get into combat with some Locust Destroyers and eventually some Immortals, and they actually had some difficulty taking them out, which I thought was a bit weird. And in the previous editions of the game, if you got into contact with something with a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, it was pretty much going to be dead. And, you know, the Locust Destroyers tended to hold up pretty well, which I thought was very interesting. So combat, there were a few lockdowns. There was one that happened when we got some bikes tied up into combat with some Tomb Blades, which again isn't ideal. But the combat felt very beefy, and it didn't feel like anything was just automatically getting deleted from the board. Again, overall, I thought the experience was good. I had fun. We had a great time playing and rolling dice. There were a few things here and there that I didn't really care too much for, like all the re-rolling with the Space Marines that we had. I am looking forward to playing another game this weekend and making a battle report for you to see next week. All right, moving on, our next topic is going to be our kids and wargaming. And this is something that has been requested to talk about in the comments numerous times. I've put some things down on making an official video about it. I just wasn't really sure how to tackle it, so I figured, you know, talking points would probably be a better avenue to discuss that. I obviously play a lot of games with my son, and I have been playing with him for years. And a lot of the questions that I get is, you know, hey, look, how do I get my, you know, kids more comfortable, you know, with wargaming? And, you know, how do I kind of get them, you know, more into the hobby? I'd love to have someone to roll some dice with. Most of us that came up in the hobby are now getting to the age where we're having children. I've got 3, and at least 2 out of 3. One's too young, but you know, 2 out of 3, they like to come by and roll some dice every now and then, and I think that's pretty cool. So first and foremost, I introduced my son to play war games by using something that he could relate to, more than having corn berserkers out there or you know, Underhive Scum or something like that. I used Paw Patrol figures, and I will put a picture here now just to reference kind of what we were using at the time. We had Paw Patrol, we had Catboy, and some other miniatures out there, things that he thought were cool at the time as a younger kid, and we would just simply play our own types of games. And you know, we would set things up on the table, you know, a coffee mug, and you know, one of the Paw Patrol pups could move behind that and get cover. You know, he could shoot with his little fire extinguisher or whatever it is. And that's kind of how I got him into rolling dice. It's just by providing something that he could relate to very early on. As you know, most of my battle reports tend to have some kind of story behind them. I'm very immersive. I play games to have that immersive kind of a feeling more so than the outcome of the game. And there was always some kind of story behind it, you know, like this Dr. Evil guy was trying to do something and the Paw Patrol were coming in to stop him. So having that kind of backstory and explaining that to him as well really kind of helped him kind of get into it a little bit, and he started to like it. From there, we went on to, you know, some more complicated things, like, you know, let's try this out with, you know, some Necromunda things now. And, you know, over the last few years, it's kind of snowballed into where we're at now. And I had a really good moment when we were playing our 40k game just a few weeks ago, because he said, I really enjoy doing this with you. And this was something that started out of COVID as a, you know, way for me to kind of get him away from tablets and off screen time and things like that. And it's just pretty crazy what it's blossomed into, and I really hope that he continues to develop, and, you know, maybe he wants to come be a part of the channel someday. Another thing to think about is you want to be sure that you encourage their creativity. I let my son start painting early on. I've let my daughter paint as well. And I think contrast paints are really good for this, and I've yet to actually give him contrast paints to use, but I'm really excited to do so. Typically, he just uses the same acrylic paints that I use, and I would let him paint Space Marines. You know, at the time his favorite color was red, and he wanted to paint up some Blood Angels, so I had some old models that I'd stripped the paint off of and gave those to him to paint. Then, you know, some of them turned out looking like Blood Angels, but I remember the early ones, you know, there was one that just turned out looking like a Rainbow Warrior. You know, there was just a ton of paint slapped on, different colors. You know, you try to encourage the creativity, let them get something that they're proud of and happy with. I would say ultimately, though, you have to respect the fact that it may not be their thing. And I totally understand that, you know, while my son is totally good, you know, with this right now, there could be a point later in his life where, you know, maybe it's not as important to him as it was, or maybe he doesn't like it as much. Maybe he wants to do something else. So I would totally respect that, you know, it's not his thing, and let him, you know, move on to do whatever he wanted to do. I would certainly hope that he wants to come back and play some games with his dad. But ultimately, you have to respect that it's not their thing. I think if you can find a way to insert war games with kids, with, you know, whether it be using things that they can relate to, or telling them some kind of story about kind of why you're playing the game and why you're rolling the dice, and make it immersive, it's a really good segue to get them into playing other things that they might enjoy. So with that, if you have any other questions on, you know, kids and wargaming, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And with that, we're going to move on to quality over quantity. And this is just where I am going to really try to step up my production value for the battle reports and things that I make. It's one of those things where sometimes I feel rushed and I feel pressured by the algorithm. I feel pressured to get a video out to, you know, continue to keep my channel going. And, you know, quite frankly, I feel that my channel has already achieved more than I ever thought it would or could, and I'm just very happy with where things are. I really want to pull back on the quantity of videos and turn to quality. Now, I've always tried to put a certain amount of quality in my video. You'll see where I set up massive battlefields, and sometimes we only end up fighting in a small quarter of it. And, you know, it's like, hey, look, you set that entire battlefield up for nothing. Well, you know, no, because I have no idea how the battle is going to turn out. There's a certain bit of quality that I always try to put into every video, no matter what's going to happen. If I think it's going to be a marathon game, or if it's going to be a very short game, I still try to put all the attention to detail that I would, you know, expecting it to really be something special. But from an editing perspective, I started with zero experience, and I've learned so much over the last few years. I want to continue to learn more and find ways to just incorporate things that I've learned into battle reports. And if that takes a bit longer, if I happen to miss a week on getting a video, I'm going to be okay with that. And I want to just be able to produce a very quality edited battle report that someone can sit down and watch in one sitting, and you know, just be very happy with the outcome. All right, for the last talking point, we're going to look at on the paint table. And over the last few weeks, I have been able to paint up the Death Guard Blightlord Terminators. I did use all Army Painter speed paints on these for the most part, and the Malignant Green that I achieved on the armor is all just a single coat, and I feel like it looks so good. I've tried to go in and give it some edge highlighting, but it just looks good the way that it is. Turned out fantastic. It might be my favorite paint right now is the Malignant Green speed paint. The rest of it I've achieved with just one coat as well. I went through and started to give some highlights to the red and to some of the silvers, and you can see even on the cloak right here on the back of this guy, that is just a single coat, and it's actually given a really nice gray highlight to the top areas here. There's just not really a whole lot more that needs to be done. So I achieved this look very quickly and effectively. I've been able to knock out these Blightlord Terminators, and I'm very happy with the result that speed paints have given me. So I'm going to continue working on my Death Guard, although they are not doing very well in the 40k environment right now. I'm going to knock out some Plague Marines next, about 2 units of those. I've got a Bloat Drone that I'm going to paint up, as well as a Plague Crawler, maybe some more Blightlord Terminators, and then I'll have 1,000 points of Death Guard ready to take the field. And that about wraps up this episode of Talking Points. If you've got any comments, questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like the video, please leave a like. We are offering channel memberships now, so you can feel free to check that out. All support for my channel is totally optional. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support my channel, so thank you so much. There's also some merchandise and some t-shirts and things that I'm working on. They're not going to be branded with my channel name or anything like that, but it's just some funny stuff that I put together. I have ordered a few samples of these to check out the quality. And if the quality is good, I'll show you some sneak peeks right now. These may be fun shirts to wear to a tournament or to your local hobby store or something like that. So just some small things that I'm working on in the background. Totally optional support for the channel. So once again, thank you as always. Thank you to the supporters clubs. Your names are on the screen now and should be updated. If you see any issues or errors with that, as always, please let me know. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care.